Welcome to another edition of Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Cleef, and I am freaking thrilled that you're here. And I never say freaking, so I thought I'd throw that in this time. And I got a very interesting guest today who's got a killer mustache, by the way, and his name is Dallon Schultz. And Dallon is a fund manager, but he's also co-founder of a new CRM called Capitallyst Pro. And we're going to dig into that a little bit, and we're going to hear his story. Welcome to the show, brother.
Appreciate you having me.
Oh, yeah, this is a treat. So you've suffered through me speaking before, you said. You saw me speak at a meetup. And did you say you've been to a boot camp, too?
I've been to a few of them.
No
I
kidding.
was one out in L.A., the one you just had in
Orlando?
Orlando.
Oh, no
a couple
kidding.
Months ago.
Oh,
I was
wow.
there as well.
Did you enjoy?
So, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
always do.
It's always a great group, isn't it? Just amazing people.
You attract a certain person to your events, and that's why I keep coming back.
Oh,
they're very genuine, and everyone there just wants to give.
That's so cool that you say that, and they say that at my Warrior events too. You know, I've got coaching students. I've got a couple thousand now. It's crazy.
Wow.
And we do these events just for them, and people are just blown away by the caliber of the people that are in my ecosystem. It's just a blessing. But I can't take credit for it. It's just a blessing. But listen, welcome, and thank you for coming all the way from Phoenix to come on our show here. Why don't you tell us who you are, where you came from? What's your story, man?
Yeah, so like most people in real estate, I didn't start in real estate. It's something I stumbled into. And I should back up a little bit. I grew up in a real estate home. My grandfather owned a bunch of multifamily units. My dad managed it, but I grew up doing all the dirty work. I grew up doing the grunt work. Always had that summer job, which was nice, made money through high school. But I never got into the ownership side of it. Didn't even cross my mind. So after,
what a great framework, though. You're working on the properties. You get to see all the crap that you deal with and learn from it, right?
Yeah, but it also showed me that that's not what I wanted to do with my life.
Right.
I mean, I remember waking up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. This was in upstate New York, going out to shovel snow off the sidewalks and ice the sidewalks, and then shingling roofs in the middle of summer with the humidity. I'm just like, this isn't for me.
There are better things.
There are better things. But something internally, I always had a desire to give back and to make a difference. So I was actually drawn into the medical field and not a fan of school. So I didn't want to go the doctor route, and talked to a couple people that were registered nurses. And I was like, cool, a little less school, could still provide for a family. I could specialize, make a few $100,000. And then in my 40s, 50s, then maybe I could own some real estate. So that was a plan. That was the path.
Did you become an RN?
I did. I got my bachelor's.
There's some schooling with that. There's some schooling with that.
Yeah, I got my bachelor's in it. And I mean, most bachelors are 4 years, but you have to do all the prereqs. So this was 6-7 years of school to begin with.
Wow.
And I wanted to specialize. I wanted to be a nurse anesthetist, put people under anesthesia when they went in for surgery.
Screw with them when they wake up.
Right. Because, I mean, they're the ones, that's the top pay scale.
Oh,
right?
is it?
Yeah, if you wanted to go that nursing route. And you can easily make $200,000-$300,000 a year. And
nice.
That's good money.
Well, that speaks to your heart too, brother. Because anybody that I've ever met that's gone into that field is a beautiful heart. So
I appreciate
shout out
that.
to that. Yeah.
So I went put my wife through nursing school first. That's actually where we met, and then she put me through, and I started working in the emergency room in the town that we lived in. And a few months into that career, I don't know. It was probably just a shitty shift. That's probably what it was. And I started thinking about my future. And I'm like, where do I want to really be in 10, 15 years? If I specialize, if I spend a few $100,000 more on my education, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? And Rod, it was incredible. It was weird and incredible. Epiphany. I felt claustrophobic. Like when I flashed forward, I felt like the walls closing in on me. And right around that same time, unfortunately, I broke my leg playing soccer. My tibia broke it all the way through.
Wow.
I got a weird little hernia there now that bulges out.
Wow.
And that put me out of work. This was a couple months into my new job, making the most money I ever made in my life, which was
just 2 months in.
Yeah,
after all that schooling.
It was 2 to 3 months in.
Wow.
My wife and I had 2 kids at the time. We have 4 now. Wow. And I remember laying there in the ER that I worked at, by the way. Oh. And when they came in, it's like, yeah, it's broken. It hit me. A wife, 2 kids. How am I going to take care of my family? The whole reason I got into the medical field was because people were going to get sick and hurt. There was a sense of security, and I could provide value there. I failed to realize what would happen if it was me. And I realized in that moment something had to change, something had to shift. So I started getting into books and podcasts, and that's when I stumbled into your podcast. This was back in 2017, 2018. Yeah. And read Rich Dad Poor Dad, of course, classic. 2 weeks after reading that book, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money. This was in Eastern Arizona. Okay. First fourplex without any of our own money, and it clicked. I was like, this is it.
So break down how you bought a fourplex, nothing down. That'll add value right there.
Yeah, so we actually called up an old landlord. It was a lady my wife and I rented from, and she was past retirement age. So I was like, if anyone's going to want to sell her property, it's probably her. So I called her up, and she said, hey, Dallon, it's great hearing from you. We're not looking to sell, but the guy next to me is. So she gave us his number. I called him up. 2 days later, we walked the property, and he was asking $200,000 for a fourplex, $50,000 a door, and he owned it outright. So he said, I'll carry the note. I'll carry $175,000. You guys just need to put $25,000 down. Great. We didn't have $25,000. So I went to a family member, my grandfather, who owned the real estate that I grew up with. And so since he knew the real estate and he had seen me grow up working in it, he had that confidence in me to take on a fourplex. So he loaned us the $25K, my wife and I, and my brother-in-law at the time. And so that's how we got into it. 100% leveraged. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone.
Yeah, it's tough to cash flow when you're 100% leveraged.
It is, and you don't know what you don't know. There's a certain level of ignorance that I think gets a lot of us entrepreneurs taking that next step. But we got into it, and my brother-in-law is a contractor, so we kept the work in house. I had that experience doing some of the maintenance and the management with my father.
Did you move in it, or this was just straight rental?
We didn't, yeah. And we knew we weren't going to be cash flowing much, but we didn't care. We knew we had to get into that first deal.
By the way, guys, if you're going to go direct to seller, ninja trick, I talk about this in my boot camp, but focus on people that have owned 20 plus years, because they're going to be retirees. The property is likely going to be free and clear. They have no tax benefits left. So when you approach them, you can say something like, hey, if you sell this property for $200,000, you're only going to net maybe $150 after Uncle Sam. But if you carry, you're going to only pay taxes on what you get from me in payments every month. And most of these retirees take the money they get from a big sale like that. They're risk averse at that point, so they're going to put it in the bank. And what's the bank paying, right? So you offer them better interest rate. They're not paying taxes except on the money they receive every year. It's a home run for them. If you don't have that conversation with them, candidly, you're doing them a disservice. So just please continue. So you bought the fourplex.
Yeah, and then a couple months later, so it was on a street where there was a bunch of fourplexes created. They were all individually owned, and there was one right across the way, and we're like, man, it'd be cool to grab that one too. 2 months later, it came up on market, and we snatched it. So kidding. Within a couple months, we had 8 units, and I was like, this is it. I'm going to be the fourplex king.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew real estate was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Let me interrupt you for a second. So the only caveat with that, fourplexes are fantastic. They're considered residential. And if you move in, hell, you can get 97% financing, 95% with Fannie Mae, and fixed 30-year financing, fixed interest rate. Fantastic way to get started, number one. But the only caveat there, the negative, there's a couple of negatives. One is the value is based on comparable sales, which you cannot control. You get into 5 units and higher, the value is based on a multiple of the net income. But so that's one caveat. The second big caveat is you can't dictate how well other owners take care of their properties.
Right.
So if you're in a bunch of fourplexes and you've got crap on the street, not a damn thing you can do about it.
Right.
So anyway, please continue.
So this was before I even knew about funds and syndications. And so it was shortly after that second one, we got put on to a conference that we attended. And that's when syndications and funds were introduced to us the first time. And again, something my brain just clicked. Like, it makes so much sense to go bigger. And so at that point, we stopped buying, because I was like, if we're going to get into these larger multi-million-dollar deals, I actually got to know what I'm doing. Like, I got into these 2 fourplexes. I just bootstrapped it, figured it out. But if we're going to be taking on investor capital and getting into larger deals, we got to learn.
You don't dabble. You don't dabble with other people's money. Right.
You don't dabble. So we stopped buying, and we just went feet first for about 12 to 18 months in education.
When you say we?
So this was me and my brother-in-law.
Gotcha.
We were business
Same
partners.
Brother-in-law. Got it. Okay.
And so we jumped in 12 to 18 months, just education, just going. And then that led into our next 8 unit with a development deal that we started working on. And then we got into some syndications.
So you bought an 8 unit, but what was the development deal? Just curious.
It came with an acre of land.
Oh, okay. Did you build something on it?
So we were planning on it, and we got it zoned for 30 units, 30 additional units. And when we were getting ready we got entitlements in place and everything. Wow. And then we got an offer for
too good to leave. Too good to leave. Yeah, got it.
So, I mean, we owned it for 14 months, got all that work in place, remodeled some of the units, and we got an offer for more than twice than what we paid for it 14 months earlier. So
sometimes you got to take the chips off the table when it's good. Okay.
Yeah. But with that same purchase, there was about 2.5 acres of commercial land that came with it. And so we did develop that into an RV and self-storage development, ground up. Wow. So talk about what you bought. Okay, RV storage. Were they fully enclosed? So this was dirt.
Okay, right. It was dirt, but what did you build?
So we bought some drive-up storage units.
Okay.
Most of it was open parking.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Okay. So just open. I just interviewed a guy that builds like 20 by 40 or 20 by 50 enclosed. Well, he doesn't build them. He gets, a metal fabricator to put those in. I thought, what a great idea. Great for businesses to have off-site storage.
Yeah.
And so I really was intrigued by that conversation. That's why I thought, oh, Christ, the same thing here. Okay. Well, that's awesome though. That's good money. That's good cash flow on vacant land.
Yeah. So we went through that. I had a full head of hair before development. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless you have the right partners and the experience. Yeah. And we bootstrapped that. So we decided to stop bootstrapping and going back to why I got into the medical field. I like making an impact, and the impact that the realization and education I received on real estate, knowing that normal people like me could get into these large assets. I started putting out more content, information, educating people in our network, and we decided to focus more so on the capital side of the business and then partner with kick-ass operators.
Okay, so you co-GP, basically.
Yeah.
And so guys, a lot of people will do this where they'll find, and this is what happens in the Warrior Group all the time, if you can find deals and bring those to a group, or find money and bring that to a group, you're in, okay? And that's called co-GPing. Now, you can't just raise the money, though. You've got to actually be involved in a lot of other things to make it legal, to be able to legally do it. But so you decided to raise money for seasoned operator deals.
Yeah, we co-GP'd 2 deals, and then we decided to do our own fund of funds.
Gotcha.
Yep.
But the fund of funds is investing in other people's deals as well.
Correct.
Okay. So you're still co-GPing.
Just a different structure.
Right, just a structure. Well, no, it's not GP. That's right. It's a fund of funds. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Explain the difference.
So with the co-GP, you're on the general partnership. You're on those calls, updates. So with our fund, we come in as a single LP.
Gotcha.
So we don't co-GP with the operators. They like it because
there's no management control.
There's no management. Like we're talking to them. We know what they're getting involved in. We do all the vetting and due diligence for our investors. And then whenever there's communication, it's us and the GP. And so it's streamlined, it's more efficient. We don't come in on any operation side or decision. And so because of that, we go through quite a bit of vetting for our operators. And they like it because we just come in as a single LP.
Yeah, and you can cut a little better deal. There's a spread typically in there, like you'll receive a certain return, and there's a little margin between that and what the investors in the fund get, and that's your skin in the or your booty.
Yeah, and when you're investing more money into these deals, a lot of operators, they'll provide maybe a higher split or a higher pref because you're investing bigger returns.
So the split is the promote, guys. That's what it's called, and it can be anywhere from 50-50 to 80-20, typically the larger number in favor of the limited partners, the equity in the deal. And so, yeah, if you're bringing a larger chunk, that can get negotiated higher. And then there's a pref is the preferred return, which comes off the top, and that can be anywhere from 6 to 8% is common. And that money is paid to the limited partners first before there's any splitting. And so that's why in most syndication deals, there's not a lot of cash flow until the property either trades as a sale, or it's the Burr method. Buy it, remodel it, refinance it, get the investors all or most of their money back, and then keep it. Okay, and so you do the fund to funds. Talk a little bit about how you find investors, because you told me you used to have a meetup. So let's go down that pathway for a minute.
So I like getting on stages. Mm-hmm. I like talking. I like
and this is a stage, by the way, guys. This podcast interview right here is considered a stage. Uh-huh.
I love that you brought that up, because a lot of people think that it's live,
right?
But this is a virtual stage,
sure,
and it's a one-to-many,
right?
And so we back when I decided to go all in with syndications and large multifamily, there wasn't a good monthly meetup in the Phoenix area. I mean, there was a few of them, but you'd have 15, 20 people. You show up at a bar, casual networking. I wanted to take kind of that conference feel that I got from boot camps like yours and some other events, and bring that into one night. Like, how could we do that? So we launched the Rev Multifamily Meetup, and we became the largest monthly gathering in Arizona focused on apartment investing. We had Robert Kiyosaki show up a couple times to it, which was really cool.
Yeah, he lives there. That's cool. And probably the real estate guys, they probably had them show up. No,
not yet. But we actually have Russell Gray coming on our podcast here in a couple of weeks. Yeah. So yeah, it's
because they live there too, I think. Don't they?
Yeah, they do. So yeah, we started that stage because we couldn't find a good one, and I was like,
Zach's wasn't around at that time, or what?
He was, but his was phasing out at that time as well. Yeah.
Zach Happenstall's another guy. Went to Phoenix and spoke at his event, but he doesn't do it anymore. But anyway, okay, so you started doing it, but you stopped after a while.
We did. Our focus shifted a little bit in the business. That was really heavy on apartment education, networking. We wanted
on raising capital.
No, now it is.
Oh, now it is. Oh, back then it wasn't. It was just education.
It was just general education.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it was a lot of work, a lot of effort. I mean, you put on 3-day events.
That's what I do as well. No, but I admire that because you took it from that angle. Because anytime you add value, the people that add the most value in this world are the most successful. They're the wealthiest. Look at Bezos and Amazon. Look at Jobs and Apple and Elon. I mean, they add tremendous value. And so the fact that you started out with adding value. I did the same thing on this podcast. When you first listened to this podcast, I used to say, I'll never sell you anything. I'm a freaking liar because I sell everything. I never planned to. You want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. But I used to do free phone calls with my listeners, 30-minute calls. I did hundreds of them. Didn't have anything to sell. Just added value. And I think that was a big catalyst for, the fact that now we're the biggest. So you added value, you did your meetups, and then you shifted.
Yeah, and the meetup helped with our brand and our name.
Sure, of course.
Nobody knew who we were.
Builds incredible goodwill.
Yeah, and that's actually how we got into our first couple syndications.
Sure.
Because people saw the event that we were hosting, the network that we were creating around it, and we weren't selling any coaching or anything like that. It was just come and learn.
That's great.
Come and learn. And it was a lot of time, a lot of effort, and focus shifted a little bit, and it was one of those tough decisions where we had to weigh out the time and energy and money spent on those things. And
that's a big commitment.
It is. And it was monthly too. So
it's more time than anything else, candidly.
It's time.
Yeah.
It was. And it was actually a very, very hard decision because I found some of my identity in those events.
Sure.
And
by the way, I want to add something there.
Please.
Okay. This is very important. Okay, guys, whenever you get into a business or buy a business, never make it your identity. And here's why. Because if it fails, you're a failure, okay? It is always your vehicle, okay? That way, if the vehicle fails, it's okay. And but you have to be very, very careful because I've built 29 businesses so far. And I call them seminars when they fail. Most have been spectacular flaming seminars, but you never allow it to. You're not a failure. That business just failed. Anyway, I just want to throw that in there.
That's an excellent point. And I think with time, business owners realize that. And that was earlier on, but we decided to pivot out of that and decided to just start focusing on the relationships and providing value and educating, and that's where we've been spending a lot of our time.
So, but you're thinking about starting it up again?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic.
We miss it. the people are asking for it.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a good monthly event there in Arizona.
It's a no-brainer then.
Yeah. So we're going to start it back up. But this time, since our focus is more on capital raising,
sure,
we're going to keep the emphasis on it more capital raising rather than all.
I will tell you, the education will lend itself to capital raising.
100%.
So it kind of goes hand in hand, candidly. Now, I know you had a podcast called the Millionaire Mind.
Millionaire Mind.
Millionaire Mind, yeah. But you're no longer doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, and now you're going to do a new one called the Capital Flow Podcast.
The Capital Flow Podcast.
Love it. You're going to bring in fund managers and syndicators.
Going to bring Rod Cleef into that.
Yeah, are you? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that podcast, and then the meetup is a Capital Flow meetup.
Oh,
and so
okay.
we have this thought, this mindset around attracting capital rather than raising capital. And so the term capital flow, the idea there is that you create a magnet. You attract that capital, it flows into you. And so the podcast and the meetup, we're gonna be having fund managers, operators talking about how they've raised money successfully.
Sure. No, I mean, listen, when you add value, you attract, and that's just how God works. And so, no, I love it. And that's and I'll tell you, my coaching students, my warriors, I think they own now 250,000 doors, and I've got dozens of meetups inside that community. There's dozens of podcasts. There's dozens, just ways to add value. There's LinkedIn groups. There's Facebook groups. There's YouTube channels. All these warriors doing all sorts of things, adding value. And that's the two things, guys. If you're going to do this and create reach, you have to do two things. You have to add value and you have to be consistent. I think I've maybe missed 2 podcast episodes out of over 1,000, and there have been a couple times I've been really sick, but you got to be consistent. You agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
And you got to show up. And what people don't realize, like whether you're doing podcasts, whether it's your own, you're getting on somebody else's, you're hosting a meetup like we did, which I don't know if that should be your first move, because it is a lot of work, but
but the nice thing about it, though, it is a lot of work, but you can act as if. Okay, there's that act as if, fake it till you make it. Because if you're the host, you're perceived as being an expert, even though very often you're just bringing in experts. You're bringing in people and just have to ask good questions.
100%.
Good interview questions. I'll tell you, I had imposter syndrome when I first started this podcast. I'd only done a few apartment complexes and actually had not done a syndication when I first started this thing.
Wow.
And I just brought in hitters and faked it till I maked it,
And that's what's great about having a stage of your own.
Right.
Like I get it's more efficient to go on other people's stages.
Sure.
But having a stage of your own, the greatest value I ever received from that was connecting with people that I in that time I felt like I had no business connecting with. But since you have a stage, what do people like talking about the most?
That's
themselves.
Right.
So you have a stage, you invite them out, you bring people out, they provide value. And that's really what got us on the roadmap early on, was just having that stage.
And guys, it's not that hard to do. And I spend quite a bit of time on this in my bootcamp, but it's just creating a brand and adding value and being consistent and just going to whatever vehicle in social media or thereabouts that appeals to you. But you got to do video. I mean, you're just going to have to be okay with doing video, whether you like it or not.
I agree 100%.
Yeah,
with that.
I mean, some people like to write and stuff, but you got to do video. Now, are you guys utilizing AI at all?
Not yet.
Yeah.
We're integrating some, outside of ChatGPT.
Right.
So we're this year we'll likely come out with an appointment setter AI chatbot. So it's in the works, but again, when you're trying to build relationships with someone that's going to write you $100,000 check, you got to tread carefully.
You pretty much got to talk to them. Yeah. They're not going to want to talk to an AI. Yeah.
So when we do integrate it, it's going to be more so on the front end as a gatekeeper.
Gotcha.
Because you and I understand our time's the most valuable thing to us. We've probably had calls with people that we felt like just wasted the time.
Sure.
What if we could have vetted them ahead of time?
Sure.
So that's how we'll come out with it initially. But it's incredible. The things that come out with AI.
Insane. I mean, in fact, there was a video clip of me, and he found some AI, and we had to change I think it was the dates and the location of my boot camp, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not me saying that. It looked just like me saying it. Shit, mouth was moving the whole thing. It was like, holy crap.
So that brings up a really good point, and I think AI is going to be an incredible tool. I don't think it's going to make anyone a superstar. They're already going to be a star, and then it's going to help accelerate things. But I think
I'm going to stop you. I just saw. Oh God, who's Vaynerchuk?
Okay.
Said he thinks that there will be AI influencers eventually, like in their future, like AI, complete AI influence. Anyway, I just want to. I literally saw that yesterday. That's why I had to say that. Yeah.
Time will tell, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm recognizing, and this is, I mean, with or without AI, what I'm recognizing is the need to get in person like this.
Oh, yeah.
Rod. So I think AI can be a great way to get some more exposure. Same thing with social media. You're getting yourself out there. You're getting your face, your voice heard. It's going to get to a point, though, where people aren't going to know if they're working with you or me.
Oh, I know.
And so my belief is that deals are going to start getting done when an actual handshake is made.
I think you could be right, because you don't know, honestly, you don't even know what to believe anymore. Don't get me started on all the political crap, and all the misinformation that you see. Like everybody thought Elon was going to have some commercials at the Super Bowl. I was watching the Super Bowl just to see Elon's commercials, and it was all bullshit. It was social media bullshit. In fact, I had people call me and say, when's Elon commercials going to... I mean, it was a big deal. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but it was all over social, and they didn't need it. It was just bullshit.
Yeah.
So anyway, but so no, I think that's a very good point. It probably will... that won't solve the money raising thing. It'll have to be an in-person relationship.
I mean, most minimums for the types of deals you and I do is $50,000 to $100,000.
Minimum, yeah, 50 to 100.
I mean, 80% of Americans make $100,000 or less per year.
Right.
And so trying to connect with people that are investing at minimum 50, 100K, I think you can initiate that relationship online, but I think you finalize it, whether it's through a live Zoom call or in person if possible.
I agree completely. So let me ask you this. You know better than most, having suffering through my podcast for as long as you have, that there are a lot of brand new people that are listening, that know they want to do something. They know that they want to get out of the rat race, or maybe they're just comfortable, but they know they need to get a little uncomfortable to really create the life that they want. What advice would you have for them?
Learn how to network.
Yeah.
That first event I went there for education. I didn't realize networking was a thing or necessary, especially for those that are doing Reg D, 506B deals. You need to have that pre-existing relationship.
Right.
So I went to this first event, break time hits, and everybody stands up and they start exchanging business cards and they're talking. And I was terrified.
Was it mine or somebody else's?
It was somebody else's.
Okay.
Yours was shortly after, though, which I actually recommend more than the other one, but we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But people started networking, and I was terrified. I was like, what are you doing? Sit down. You're making me feel uncomfortable. But then I started learning about the SEC regulation and having those relationships and realizing that if I wanted to get to where I wanted to go, I had to connect with people that were already there. That requires networking.
Sure.
And I refer to myself as that extroverted introvert type of person. So...
Well, I'll tell you something, and I tell people, the brand new warriors, new students, and at my my boot camp, I make people get up and network, and I make them get uncomfortable.
It's good.
And I typically put a map up of the United States, and I say, go to the map where you live so you can meet people that live near you and force it. And people have come up to me afterwards, serious introverts, and said, thank you for pushing me. Because this business is a team sport. I mean, 100%. It totally is. Not just the operational piece of it, not just you're not going to go buy a 100-unit complex by yourself, period. So you've got to have, the team, the GP internal team, but also the investors you bring in. You've got to go out there and network. And I don't like it either, candidly. I'm pretty good at it, but I don't like it. It's uncomfortable for me to small talk and stuff like that.
It drains me. I can do it even going to these conferences 2 or 3 days.
You're definitely an introvert if it drains you.
I'm on a high during those 3 days, but then it always takes me a day or two to
So
recover.
You get energy from being alone?
Not necessarily.
No? Okay.
I'm energized by people. Like if I'm in a group outside of real estate or mindset, I'm shut off.
Okay.
Like, forget it.
Okay.
But since real estate mindset, personal growth, since that's a passion of mine, it brings that energy out, but it still drains me.
Gotcha. Yeah, introverts typically get energy from being alone. Extroverts like me, I need to be around people. I'll just go to the mall and walk around, and I feel fantastic.
I need a good balance. I need a good balance.
Okay, well, that's good. That's fantastic. So networking, it would be a suggestion.
And networking to figure out how you can provide value to valuable people. And so not just going out and saying who you are and what you do. That's good. That's part of networking. Get to know people for who they are. And if you're uncomfortable, if you're an introvert, you don't know what to say, ask questions. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Just ask questions about that person and get to know them.
Go read How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's the premise of that book, is just have a genuine interest in the other person. Ask them questions.
100%.
And through those questions, you can guide the conversation. And they think it's the greatest conversation they ever had because they're doing all the talking.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember going to a family office event, Lewis's in Miami, and there was, these $1 billion family offices there, and I was intimidated. This was early on. And I had in my back pocket, I had an index card with questions on it, so that, and I had 5 seconds of courage. Hi, I'm Rod Khleif. I don't think we've met. That was my line. And then I'd have I'd review those questions so I didn't fumble, and I would just ask questions, and that's how you get through it.
And you realize people are people at the end of the day. And one of the things that really drew me into the multifamily space was just the quality of the person. Like, they're the type of what I would refer to as like the blue collar millionaire, right? People, a lot of them are engineers, a lot of them were corporate employees that transitioned into real estate, and being newer a few years back, asking questions, people were more than happy to share their experience.
Most people enjoy sharing. And which is why you want to get around people like this. That's why the Warrior Group's so effective, and just going to these events is so powerful, because most people, unless they're trauma damaged, emotionally damaged, want to help other people. That's just human nature. So
and we've all been there.
Yeah,
we've all been there where we started from ground zero. So naturally, I think we want to mentor and help other people.
That's it. Do you feel like there's a type of person that's better suited for this business than another?
Not at all. Not at all.
I have to agree.
Yeah, and in fact, I think where I really realize that is when it comes to sales. Because like in sales, a lot of us...
Have you done sales?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Well, I do. Well, my argument is that we do sales every day.
Right.
I have to sell myself to my wife that I'm worth keeping around, right? So, but I think when it comes to sales, there's a lot of limiting beliefs and stuff around that. And I've had to grow and mature with that as well. I have a really good friend of ours. He's actually our team's internal sales coach. He views sales as a form of leadership. So he has a really unique philosophy on it.
I like that.
And so that's when I first realized that it's maybe not the type of person you think it might be, because some of the people that I know that have raised the most capital, you would probably consider them introverts.
Oh no, very often they are.
Yeah.
Okay, very often they are. I mean, I've had people sitting on that couch with 10,000 doors, and you're surprised because they're not the outgoing type A you expect.
It's not this big social media influencer.
Right. Oh, that either. But even their mannerism, their in the raising money for a fund or investor relations piece of the business, what do you find to be the most challenging pice of that?
I think meeting people where they're at in their investment journey.
Please elaborate.
So I use this metaphor quite often. My wife and I were going on 12 years being married.
Nice.
I didn't ask her to marry me on the first date. And I think a rookie mistake a lot of people make when they're in the real estate game is they'll go to a networking event, find somebody, find out they have money, they get this commission breath, and they're like, hey, I got this incredible deal. Let me tell you all about it. Here's the numbers. Here's the return. They're going from that. They're looking for a one-night stand.
Right.
Is really what they're looking for. And raising capital, it's a relationship game. So I didn't ask my wife to marry me on that first date. We realized that there was some connection. We had some more dates. We started talking. I learned about her family. She learned about mine. And then eventually we got to that point where we were comfortable taking that next step. I think people try to push and accelerate those relationships quicker than they probably should.
That is really good advice, guys. Really good advice. Focus on building the relationship. And I will tell you something. I'm going to circle back to something that I said earlier. When you're dealing with elderly sellers, don't talk about the deal first. Talk about build a relationship first. Especially, elderly people are more relationship driven than young people, and you bond with them. And when you bond with them, you can cut an incredible deal, which is, I'm sure, what you did on that first fourplex.
100%.
Yeah.
And now we don't even talk about numbers or the deals till maybe 3, 4, or 5th call.
Yeah, that's
right.
it.
The first few calls.
You get to know them.
Yeah.
Get to know them. Find out the kids. What do they like? That's influence is what that is, and that's how you influence by building trust, building relationship, and then you. And I love the leadership angle on the sales. I really like that. That's a great position to have psychologically when you're. So let me ask you this: what do you enjoy the most about raising money?
My mind was blown when I realized I always thought apartments were owned by like one really, really rich person, either from like LA or New York City or Saudi Arabia or Dubai. Once I realized it's everyday people, that blew my mind, and I almost felt like this internal calling or mission to let people know that it's even an option. Right. And so when you're having that conversation with somebody and they realize that they can use their old IRA or their old 401k to invest in real estate, they want to get it out of the stock market into something tangible, just being able to educate people and give them another path that they didn't realize was an option before.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know it. It's surprising how many people don't know. So talk about a time you got your butt handed to you on a deal. Talk about a war story. I think people learn more from those than anything else. So talk about a seminar. A doozy.
It was a self-storage development. I joked earlier that I had a full head of hair.
You lost your hair. That's right. Okay. So what happened?
When we broke ground or initially kicked this off, I think it was 2020, and we all know the year of 2020. And shortly after, with it being ground up development, construction costs went through the roof.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing these pictures on social media of a pile of wood. This is my retirement.
Right. Yeah, it was like to a point where we even considered building everything out of cold form steel.
No kidding.
Because lumber was so high.
Right.
And so the costs went through the roof, so we were over budget. And just due to our inexperience and relying on others, we got ourselves in a pickle where we broke ground and things came to a screeching halt because we didn't have a fire suppression system.
Oh my God.
And we thought at that point, we were told that things are good. It doesn't seem like you really need it. And then the city comes in and they're like, where are your sprinkler plans? And we're like, what are you talking about? Wow. They're like, you got to stop until we have that. And so we broke ground. We laid the foundation for the office and started like all the grading and everything. And so that came to a screeching halt, and it took about 6 to 7 months going back and forth, because any time in development when you submit a plan, you're waiting 6 to 8 weeks minimum just for a response. And the response is like, oh, that's not right. You need this, resubmit. We'll get back to you in another 2 months. And it got to a point where we're like, screw this. Like, we fired the architect, brought on a new one, and she really dove into the code in that city. And she was like, okay, if we move some of these buildings, if we had an apartment over the office, if we take that down and we do this, and this, we won't need fire suppression. We're like, are you sure? Yes, we're 100% sure. So
what's the lesson in that? Because I know what it is. I just want to know if you know what it is.
Pay money to get the right people on the team.
And
partner with the right people.
The right people that are ingrained in that municipality.
Yeah.
The good old boy network, the people that know the people in codes, the people that know what the hell is going to work and what's not going to work.
We went with a budget draftsman.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to save a few bucks.
But you got to have somebody that's connected.
Would you
agree with that?
100%. Yeah. Spend the money on the right person.
Yeah.
Like that would have saved us time and money. And then there was market conditions that were out of our control.
Well, sure. But when you're dealing with any municipality, my God, you want to, like one of my warriors, Eric Upchurch. Eric went and met with the mayor. He's a great guy. Went and met with the mayor of across from an in the town that he bought an apartment complex. My God, how smart is that?
Yeah.
You got an issue, you call the freaking mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just an extreme example, but the point is, especially in development, you want to have people that are connected in the city or county, that's governing. But anyway, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Our contractor, they were known for self-storage development. Mm. They were the ones that kept that deal together.
Really?
Like I can't speak highly enough of them. Mm. So that just showed me having the right people and expect it to take longer.
So you said you like mindset stuff.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, where's that come from, and how does it show up, and how do you stay, involved in it? That's a lot of questions, but yeah.
So I realized how much when I left the medical field. This was October 2019, 6 months before COVID outbreak. I left and got my real estate license, jumped into...
Oh, you got your real estate license.
At that time to help transition, to help support the family while I was still carrying on the multifamily stuff. That license lapsed years ago.
Right.
But when I left that W-2 job and I started working for myself, that's when I got blindsided by how unprepared I was to be my own boss. Because up to that point, even in the medical field, I showed up to work. They told me, here are your 6 patients that you're looking out for the night. Here's literally a checklist of everything that they need. Go through it. When you start working for yourself, you're
better have damn good discipline.
Yes.
And ideally have a map or a blueprint from somebody that's done it before. Yes.
And that's when I got blindsided by how unsure I was about certain things. And just through a lot of meditation, books, getting around other people doing the same stuff, that's when I developed a deep passion for personal growth and development, and it's all up here.
So what's some of the things you've done for your personal growth and development? Any event you've gone to see Tony or anybody like that? What have you done?
I haven't done Tony. For me,
books. What?
Yeah. So the book that really helped me in that transition early on was A Miracle Morning.
Oh yeah, I've had Hal on the show twice. Hal Elrod. That's a beautiful book.
That book, and I implemented it. And then I realized, and this is for me personally.
And by the way, my Warriors, sorry to interrupt, my Warriors get that book as a gift typically when they sign up.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And, by the way, if you haven't read the book, it's basically how you get up in the morning and start your day off. But please continue. Sorry I interrupted.
That was the first time in my life implementing his book that I was probably that consistent at anything on a daily basis. And that's when it really clicked for me. And moving forward now, it's that book is great. I still implement it, not as much as I probably should. But for me, I realized it's the daily habits. It's showing up for yourself daily, telling yourself, keeping your own commitments.
Yeah, half the battle is showing up.
Yeah,
I forgot whose quote that is. So is there, besides The Miracle Morning, is there a book that you like to, because you've obviously, certainly when you did your meetup and everything else, I'm sure you told people to go watch Rich Dad or read Rich Dad, but are there any other books that you've gifted more than another?
Not more than the other.
Okay. Okay.
I think maybe this comes from me having a lack of empathy. I know that about me because I've taken some personality tests, but I love the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko
Goggins.
Willink.
Is that Goggins? No,
Jocko.
Jocko. Oh,
yeah.
Jocko. Yeah,
because that's awesome. Just like we've all got shit going on. We've all got stuff that we gotta go through. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Like, take ownership for what you're gonna do.
The good and the bad.
The good and
just
the bad.
Just own it all.
Yeah.
When you own it all, it's refreshing, and it actually minimizes your stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. Back to that, either that first fourplex or that first syndication you did, whichever one gave you the most fear. How'd you get past that fear on that first deal? And which one gave you the most fear? Was it the big one, or was it was it raising money for a larger deal, or was it that fourplex?
I'd say it was the first fourplex because I never done real estate, but it was I wasn't experiencing fear.
You didn't have a lot of fear. All right. All right.
So I would say a level of ignorance, Rod.
Okay.
If I knew what I knew now, maybe there would have been a little bit more fear.
Fair enough. Have you encountered fear in any stage of this real estate?
100%. Whenever a deal's not going as planned.
And how do you get through it?
You own it. Back to that development, we unfortunately had to do a couple capital calls.
You did. Wow.
And nobody wants to do that, and fortunately it was a smaller group. That was a joint venture. It wasn't a syndication. And so partners that we had good relationships with already, and we just said, we laid it all out. We said, hey, this is where it's at. This is what happened. This is what we could have done differently. This is what we're doing moving forward. So anytime I have to deliver bad news, I'd say that's where I get the most fearful, but that doesn't mean not to deliver it.
Right.
Deliver it and then provide a solution. And most people are pretty understanding.
Yeah.
Most people understand, like, hey, we get it, shit happens. What are we going to do to change it moving forward?
If you were careful in your selection initially. And that's why initial selection with partners is very, very important. And by the way, guys, I've got a book about this, the questions you should ask before you get in a partnership, because a partnership's like a marriage, you know,
100%.
easy to get into, hard to get out of. And so you want to ask the hard questions up front. But the other thing is, whenever there are issues, you need to over-communicate. Really just over-communicate. So you've got this automated CRM called Capitallyst Pro with two L's in there, Capitallyst Pro.com. And it's your CRM for real estate investors to raise more capital. So guys, you can check that out. You also got your podcast coming out here, the Capital Flow podcast. You're going to start your meetup if you're in Phoenix, or is it Scottsdale as well? They're both kind of connected.
Yeah.
If you're in that area, keep an eye out for that. How do you have like a LinkedIn or a social presence anywhere that people can look you up?
I'm on LinkedIn, probably not as much as I should be,
Okay.
but honestly, the website that you directed them to, that's probably the best.
Capitalistpro.com.
We're going to start putting more content out on LinkedIn.
Good.
Just helping people understand the importance of a CRM and just being organized and having a system around it.
That's it. You've got to be organized, guys. Any business is nothing but people and systems. That piece is the systems. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, brother. It was great to see you.
It was a pleasure.
And you absolutely added tremendous value. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.